So for video 2 in our Genesis series, again, remember from the first one, we're talking about Genesis Direct Stick and how we're going to eliminate propagation for you, increase your profits, reduce your heating bill, and get rid of the liner stage in your geranium production. It's spring, you're sitting and doing your planting right now, probably as we speak, trying to figure out where you're going to fit all the crops in. So let's look at how we were able to stick a Genesis Direct Stick on the same day as a transplanted liner and finish all these beautiful plants behind me on the same timing. We brought our Genesis Direct Stick in on week 29 and we're in Arroyo Grande, California. We direct stuck that in a 4.5 inch pot or a gallon right in this greenhouse. No bottom heat needed. We kept our nighttime temperatures at 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 15 degrees C, and we propagated right on this bench behind me. No bottom heat, no mist. We had an average daily temperature of 68 degrees Fahrenheit, which translates to 20 degrees Celsius, and our average daily moles were pretty high, up in the 20s. So we have a lot of highlight in California, but we were able to finish this Genesis Direct Stick Dynamo Hot Pink on an 8-week crop time from the Direct Stick. So if you want to talk about the liner, what's different about the liner? Well, this liner and this pot was transplanted as a 4-week-old liner on the exact same week, week 29. The difference is we brought this URC in on week 25, so we had to have 4 weeks in propagation and 4 weeks of extra heat and 4 weeks of extra bench space taken up. So Genesis Direct Stick option is really the way to go, because you're reducing your bench space in propagation and in the greenhouse. You're going to direct stick this Genesis on the same space that it would take to transplant your liners. So I've saved you 4 weeks, I've saved you space, and I've saved you heat, because my liner had to be propagated at 68 degrees Fahrenheit with bottom heat. Now let's look at the misting differences of Genesis Direct Stick compared to URC. You can see on the screen right now is a chart that gives you an outline of how Genesis Direct Stick or Genesis in propagation compares to URC in terms of a mist schedule. For Genesis Direct Stick in the greenhouse, you can see we were misting every 15 to 30 minutes. It's going to depend on your environment. And we put remay over the top of the cuttings to give a better retention of humidity and moisture in those pots on the bench. So let's take another look at a screenshot. And this shows you that remay over the top of the plants right in propagation, so that you can see the technique we used, and then we missed right over the top of it to keep those cuttings turgid while they were rooting into the pot. Now you can see on the screen a quick shot of what the tray looked like when we transplanted the liners. So we also want to highlight some of the differences that we had to do culturally to finish this crop. On our Genesis Direct Stick, we only had to do 1 PGR, and that was 2 weeks after Direct Stick. We did a B9 Psychocell tank mix, Psychocell 750 parts per million and B9 2500 parts per million. That gave us the nice tone habit with full flowers on top that you see here. Now for our liner, we had to do 2 PGR applications, 1 in propagation 2 weeks after stick and 1 2 weeks after transplant. Same tank mix, Psychocell 750, B9 2500 parts per million in a tank mix. So we also want to highlight, because at this point you're probably saying, this looks like a trick. There's no way that you could direct stick a Genesis cutting and transplant a liner on the same day and produce the same quality. So let's look at some pictures along the way. Picture 1 you see is what the input looked like when we transplanted. So that's what a Genesis cutting looks like when it comes to you, that's callus from Guatemala, and what the liner looked like when we transplanted it at 4 weeks old on the liner. So how did they finish the same? Well, if you look at picture 2, 3 weeks into transplant, these plants have caught up to each other. You can see the roots are fairly equal, the habit is fairly equal. There's still a little more branching on the unrooted cutting that was transplanted as a liner, but at 3 weeks into production, you've basically caught up. And now, 5 weeks later, you have equal plants, both blooming on the same timing, but with the Genesis Direct Stick, I've taken 4 weeks off your bench and 4 weeks out of your heating bill. So Genesis Direct Stick is clearly the way to go to produce a high quality geranium in spring with less space and less heat. And eliminate that liner, no double transplanting. Just transplant it once as a direct stick and you're done. So thanks for tuning in today, finding a little bit more out about Genesis. If you haven't tried it yet, or if you haven't done a direct stick, now's the time to try it. Your Ball seed rep and ballfloraplant.com have more information, including the mist chart that we referenced, and a complete culture guideline on how you can be successful producing Genesis direct stick in your greenhouse right on a bench like this. Thanks for tuning in to BFP TV. Keep the plants happy and they'll keep you happy.